Welcome to the Authentic Man podcast. I am your host, David Chambers. This is a podcast for men who want more and less from life. More deep connection, more emotional intelligence, more self-awareness, and more great sex. And less heartache, less conflict, less overthinking, and less stress. Creating dating lives, sex lives, and relationships that are incredible and authentic. My deepest goal is that you, the listener, can take away what you hear in this podcast and apply it to your life so that you can experience greater happiness, transformational growth, deeper relationships, and profound sexual intimacy. I believe that as men, we are capable of so much more depth than we are shown or led to believe. So join me as we get deep into this. Hello, and welcome to the Authentic Man podcast with myself, your host, David Chambers. This episode is a really special episode because it's a topic that's really close to my heart because of, my experiences as a black man living in London, especially in the last 12 months. I don't need to go into the details of that necessarily, but, mental health is a serious thing. It's something that I often used to think that it's an issue for other people. And then I experienced the last year of my life where, being at home, like many of you, not trapped at home, but at home a lot with your own thoughts and within your own walls, and also goings on in the US and around race relations amongst people. It really was a time of a lot of mental turmoil for me, actually. Like I think it was a difficult time, a lot of processing, even with my girlfriend. My girlfriend's Swedish, so having to explain to her the traumas that I've experienced and the what goes on for black people. So, in this episode, I speak to Minowa from Black Minds Matter, who's a wonderful young lady doing some great work over there. And Black Minds Matter is a charity and a really amazing mission they have, right? When I first read about these guys, why I wanted to get them involved in the podcast is because the mission is to connect black individuals and families with free mental health services. Free. So they're basically, doing their best to help people who can't get access to mental health services get it for free, right? And that's courses of therapy. And I know that they provided about 1,500 or so people already in the last 12 months with free therapy. And I know their aim is to be able to give a lot more. And as a charity, they live on donations. And after I recorded this episode, which was about a month or so ago, I instantly just went and started donating monthly. So I will say that there's a link in my bio, not the bio, it's the links in the show notes to donate. And they have a program. They're looking for 21,000 donors to give as little as £5 a month to help with their mission. And I feel like we could all do that. If you're listening to this podcast, most likely you have an iPhone or an Android and you have a full-time job, and £5 isn't much to you, So I implore you to donate. Even if you are not black and you feel like maybe this isn't an issue for you, we're all responsible for society and helping society move forward. And therapy, as I can speak, because I've been in therapy for the last year and a half now, has been invaluable to me, having someone to speak to, someone outside of my family and friends. And as I say to people when they ask me, is therapy worthwhile? I said, what's really beautiful about therapy? You can talk to someone for an hour and you don't have to give a fuck about them. You just speak about you. And how often do you get to do that in your life where you don't have to worry about judgment or what someone's going to say about you, what they're going to think about you, because they're a therapist. They're trained to listen to you really well. So, in this episode, we get into a lot of the issues around black men, black communities, mental health, and relationships, and the kind of intersection of all those things. We talk about our own personal experiences of the last year or so, where it makes mental health issues make relationships difficult, or kind of connecting difficult, or even just connecting with friends and family difficult. And we also get into a lot about, the details around black communities and mental health, and that's a really interesting conversation because I remember definitely in the 90s when I was growing up, the whole mental health and black people and some of the conversations you'd be party to, if you heard those now, you would be, somewhat surprised that, Minowa's a bit closer to it in her work. So yeah, there's a lot of great takeaways from this episode. You're gonna know, you're gonna leave this episode knowing a deeper understanding of kind of blackness and mental health, the intersection, the dysfunctions, but also how to keep yourself in good mental health. That's one of the things that we really wanted to get through in the episode, is like how to keep yourself in good mental health, where you can find help, who you can turn to for help, because this is what we really want, right? And how also you can help the loved ones in your life. So yeah, this episode is full of a lot of gold. Minowa was amazing. She was very generous with her energy and her time. So yeah, it's going to be, you're going to get into this in a second, but I'm just going to let you know about, my up and coming workshops. I've got a workshop again. I've got a tantric massage workshop coming up, and a deeper dating, in-person speed dating event. And those are on the 9th and the 30th of June, respectively, in that order. And I'm really looking forward to those, right? Because I really love the tantric massage course that I run, and it's just an evening for couples, and it's all done on Zoom. But it's a really beautiful way to just reconnect deeply with your partner. It's a sort of workshop where the first half of it is really just going through some exercises, just like couples exercises, and then the last kind of 45 minutes is the actual massage. And again, there's no nudity necessarily or anything like that. So I really implore you, if you're in a couple and you want to connect more deeply with your partner, maybe you felt a bit distant in these times, in the last kind of few months, whereas we're opening up, and you want to kind of reconnect deeply, that's a really great one to join. And like I said, Black Minds, I want to also mention, Black Minds Matter. They have their campaign to get donors. And I really, like I said, jump on if you can. And the last bit of business for the episode, before I forget, is, I'm still running my competition for you to win a seat at my Be Authentically Attractive workshop, which is happening on the 4th of July. To enter and to get into the workshop, all you have to do is follow me on Instagram at the authentic man _ and share this episode. There's usually there'll be a post about this episode. Just share it and tag me, and then I'll add you to the list of people that want to go there. In the workshop, really going to talk about how we can deeply connect with each other in the workshops for men and women. And yeah, it's going to be incredible. I've done the talk before and people got a lot from it. A lot of guys asked me for the recording, and at the time I wasn't able to give that to them. So yeah, you're going to learn how to kind of connect more deeply, not just to if you're dating, but also in a relationship. What is the mechanics of us, connecting deeply? How can we be more vulnerable? How to have boundaries, and how boundaries affect our ability to connect. I'm going to get into a lot of detail, and then you'll be able to ask me all sorts of questions about dating and relationships and stuff like that afterwards. As I'm a dating and intimacy coach, is kind of what I do day in, day out. So yeah, I'd love you to enter. All the details I've just mentioned is very simple to do. Just go to Instagram, share a post, and tag me in it. But without further ado, we are going to get into this episode of the Authentic Man podcast. So, ladies and gentlemen, we've got another wonderful podcast episode for you today. I'm going to get into a topic which is quite close to my heart, but also something that I see as something that is probably under talked about as a subsection of mental health, and that is Black men and mental health, and how that affects their relationships and their dating and things like that. And to join me today, I've got Minowa, who is coming straight from Black Minds Matter UK. Hey.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm feeling quite relaxed now after I had a small meditation before we started recording.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I did some yoga earlier before this as well. Yeah, definitely needed after sitting down at a desk all day.
Yeah, you need to kind of like leave something behind, relax in a little bit, and enjoy. It's good to see your wonderful cat there. That looks a bit like a lion at this size.
It's not even my cat. That's the funny thing. It's my neighbour's cat, but he's just decided he liked to live with us instead.
Oh, must be a very nice warm home you live in.
Yeah, we have got a wood burner, to be fair.
Oh, I must say, I feel jealous. So we're gonna talk about it'd be good to get an intro about how did Black Minds Matter UK get started?
Yeah, so in June 2020, they launched, both Agnes and Annie launched the campaign because of obviously like all the protests and everything that kind of brought to light like the issues that were already going on, but it kind of brought them into like the mainstream media, and it was kind of getting more recognition. So they decided they wanted to be able to offer Black people therapy with certified Black therapists, because obviously it can help with working through racial trauma, and having someone that can understand like what it's like to go through discrimination and to do with race can be really helpful. So we've since then we've raised £800,000, which is amazing. And we offer people 12 weeks free therapy. And at the moment, we've actually just launched our 21K donor challenge, which is amazing. We've set our goal of 21 weeks to find 21,000 long-term donors, who are willing to donate £5 a month to Black Minds Matter. And we're looking for both individuals and organisations to get on board and help us achieve our goal. And then this can mean that we can become a sustainable charity, and then we'll have an annual income of 1.2 million, which will cover the cost of 1,500 courses of therapy every single year. And it means that we could get through all of the 2,600 people on our waiting list and be able to offer, obviously gain more therapists as well. We've currently got 98 therapists, which is amazing, but we get requests every single day of people wanting to join the wait list, which unfortunately is currently closed because it's so full that we'll actually be reopening that in August. So yeah, the challenge should really help with that.
Wow, that's a very long waiting list. Must be it was quite a noble cause, like last year was a quite a traumatic year. I can say for myself, actually, I started therapy at the beginning of last year before everything unfolded as it did. And I must say it was an invaluable resource to have someone to speak to every week about just what I was feeling, what was going on. So yeah. That's a beautiful cause, and I hope some of our listeners will jump on. I'm sure I'll put a link in the show notes of how you can donate and you can support Black Lives Matter UK.
Yeah, and people are still welcome to contact, like you can still email in or contact us via the website if you do want to join the wait list, and we can contact you when it reopens. So don't let that stop you from contacting us.
Wonderful. So we're going to get in and talk about, Black men and mental health and how that affects kind of relationships, romantic and personal. But I thought it'd be good to start with a bit of a definition of mental health, because I think sometimes we have these words, phrases that we think we know what they mean, but we've never really spent some time to actually really look at what the definition is. So you end up with like an incorrect meaning of something. So I had a little Google around beforehand, and I kind of got this as a definition of mental health. Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act as we cope with life. It also helps determine how we handle stress, relate to others, and make choices. And I found this interesting because often I think when we think of mental health, we always think of the kind of crisis end, like something's wrong, someone's depressed, someone is feeling anxious or something like that. And we forget that actually mental health is the health of our minds, our health of our emotional and mental bodies, beings, depending how you see the world. But I think it's good to start off, and it's often I call this kind of mental fitness more now, because I think the term mental health has some connotations for some people, and they hear it and they assume that there's something wrong, instead of that. Mental fitness for me fits a little bit better, just because it's like we have body fitness, we even like we think of the fitness of a country, but it's like it skews towards the end of good health. This is a phrase I quite like.
I really like that, because I always, even today when I was kind of writing out some of the things I was going to, I didn't want to, whenever you say the word mental illness, then it straight away has this stigma, and like I was trying to find words that didn't have such like negative connotations of it. Mental fitness, I really like that, because like you said, people tend to straight away think that as soon as you mention mental health, you've got like a particular illness, or like you said, depression or anxiety. But obviously it's not only people that suffer from those illnesses and stuff that need to work on their mental health, but everyone should be like putting effort into looking after their own mental health, really, and mental fitness.
Definitely, and it's something that I think's become to my mind a lot more in the last kind of year and a half, more because I'm hearing a lot more conversations around me around mental health. And I never really thought for myself actually had any real concerns. And I'll probably get into this a bit more, but actually just always maintaining certain things in my life kept my physical health, which has always been quite important to me, but also helped me maintain my mental health as well. And the other thing I also checked out before we started was some of the signs around kind of main warning signs around mental health issues that you could be dealing with. Just for the listeners, if you're listening to this and you think, okay, a lot of us, especially men, are like, oh, I'm fine. No, I'm fine. Everything good. I'm fine. I've only got 3 words to describe how I'm feeling. It's good, okay, and fine. Those are the only words most men have, right? And I coach men around their ability to communicate, and it's amazing how once you give a man some language that he can do a lot more of himself and communicate a lot better. So here's some of the warning signs that you might have. You might be suffering from some sort of mental health issue or some illness, or just, your mental health is in poor shape. Excessive paranoia, worry, or anxiety. This is like you find yourself waking up feeling anxious in the middle of the night, maybe something like that. Long-lasting sadness or irritability. I think somewhere I read a little while ago, it's like any sadness or low mood that lasts longer than kind of like 2 weeks is something you should start considering. It could be something more than just a passing sadness. If you're feeling lots of extreme mood changes, and I know in this current world where Boris is controlling our lives, this might be a little bit after Boris has finished controlling our lives, but the times of Corona, it's very easy to be in extreme moods. You'd be like, one day, woo, tomorrow the lockdown's going to end. By the evening, you'd be like, oh shit, lockdown's not going to end. Boris has fucked us all. I'm thinking of Christmas. Social withdrawal, I think, is one as well, where you don't want to be around other people. You want to be isolated from other people. It's something we should all be looking out for. Is something that comes up, especially in the people around us as well. And any kind of dramatic changes in eating or sleeping patterns, I think, is also something you should look out for as well. I don't know, if there's anything off the list that I didn't say there that's something we should really be looking at
No, I think you covered them all, actually. Yeah, no, that sounds really good. That's definitely the things I would choose too.
Thank you. So the first kind of part of the topic I'd like to really get into is why is mental health a taboo or a neglected topic amongst Black communities? Like, I have my own kind of theories, but you are far more of an expert in this field than I am. I'd love to hear your thoughts.
Yeah, sure. So I think one of the main things is that in Black communities, often it can be seen as like a sign of weakness. So rather than being a health problem that possibly requires treatment or needs addressing, it can often be something that should be hidden from others. And I think obviously the way we perceive mental health can be shaped through our experiences, cultural traditions, and education, as well as social media. So if you've had people, maybe family members or the communities you're around, who have a negative view of it, for example, if in your family someone refers to your crazy uncle and they were hospitalized, then this could result in you believing that mental illness means that you can't function in society, and that is like a really bad thing. Do you know what I mean? So I feel like that can be one of the main reasons. But also there's things like identity. So if people believe that symptoms of depression are just a part of everyone's life, that it's just the way it is, then people might dismiss them and not want to address them or find ways to help like ease their symptoms. Or on the other hand, they might be ashamed of experiencing these symptoms without realizing how common depression is, and that there shouldn't be a shame around experiencing or discussing it or seeking help. Also, the cause of mental health problems could have been like a result of like spiritual weakness or people might think that it's a result of spiritual, personal, or like an issue with their character, rather than something that almost everyone goes through in some kind of way, and it can be developed in the same way as a physical illness can, and should just be treated just as equally really as a physical illness. But I think often people feel more ashamed to talk about mental illness than if, like, you wouldn't. I think it's more common for people to find it easy to call up and say, oh, I've hurt myself, I can't come into work. But to call up and say that you're having issues with your mental health, I think is a really difficult thing for people in general, but particularly in the Black communities. I think people can feel quite ashamed around it. I think also as well, like, I've seen some statistics about the fact that Black people, particularly Black men, will be more likely to experience mental health issues, but white people will be more likely to receive the help. And I think maybe, like, the consequences, people might not realize the consequences of not looking after your mental health and dismiss it. And that's probably why more people not the only reason, but one of the reasons could be that they might be experiencing more mental health because they haven't gone and reached out for the help that they need. And then also obviously things like systemic racism and lack of culturally sensitive treatment by healthcare providers can result in both conscious and unconscious bias towards the patient. So they might have actually experienced this previously when they've been to reach out for healthcare, meaning they don't want to go back because they felt that they weren't treated correctly and, like, were mistreated due to racism and discrimination, or they might have heard from other people, or that they might be treated differently and there might not be any people of colour in their GP practice that they'd like to speak to. And also in the past, there's been a lot of research using Black people as guinea pigs that mean that people might not trust the healthcare system, which can also stop them from going. And then just kind of in general, like, societal pressures and stereotypes as well, I think can also influence it.
Yeah, some interesting things you said there about the kind of crazy uncle, because I'm thinking back to my childhood, and I'm pretty sure one of my uncles when I was young, he had schizophrenia. And I definitely remember him being described as, like, crazy because he had to go to somewhere, and the kind of stigma around that was really, really quite strong, actually. And it was very much like, being seen as dangerous as well, right? He was seen as, like, there was something wrong with him. He was dangerous. He had to be taken away. And I remember as a child almost being, like, told the story, and it's like almost fear being put into you about someone. And it's interesting because I look back, I was born in the early mid 80s now. And, like, in the 90s, there was so little conversation around, depression. Schizophrenia was something I knew a little bit more about, maybe because of family reasons. And also there's someone who suffered from postnatal depression, which escalated into schizophrenia. But most people, it was just literally like, okay, if you've got mental health issues, you're crazy. And and there's a lot of that talk in the Black community. There's a lot of that. And one of the other things I always remember is church. I don't know, I have much experience of church in my younger years, and I was not keen on it, but it was very much this idea that, if you were in any way suffering from anything that was to do with the mind, and it was possibly demons, you were possessed, there was some form of, I've even heard of exorcisms being done, or people being taken to priests to be prayed for. Praying would heal them from there. Yeah. Because there's this idea, there was just, when I look back in the 90s, it was like there was just such a lack of education. There was so little education around about mental health issues and how it affected people, and how actually people could be perfectly functioning in society. And it wasn't something that needed to be ostracized or taken away. So there's a lot of stigma in the Black community around mental health issues. And I still see, like, I've been in quite a few clubhouse rooms in the last few weeks, and I've seen a lot of rooms talking about Black men and mental health, which is really promising, actually, and a lot of kind of positive conversation. But it's still, every so often I hear some comments that sit inside what I think is, like, the issues that within the Black community, I think, around hypermasculinity, which I think is still a thing, is very prevalent. It's like this idea of, like, not just the masculinity we see. And I don't know if I want to put it apart from toxic masculinity, but I'll call it hyper masculinity, where it's like a man needs to be really big. He needs to be sleeping with lots of women. He needs to be really tough. He needs to drive a nice car. There's like this real like hyper masculinity that exists for a lot of Black men. And this is definitely one of the things that I see, just as simple as actually just speaking about how one feels becomes a huge barrier to being able to, and as you said, that being seen as weak, because none of us want to be seen as weak at all. So, for a Black man, especially, to stand up and go, I have anxiety or I'm suffering from depression, if he doesn't have people around him who are educated in how to receive and listen to that, then the fear is that, as you said, he'll be labeled as being weak, not man enough, crazy. All these things can come up for a man. And that wasn't even before I thought about the issues of feeling that you might be treated differently or wrongly in the healthcare system. And I remember there was definitely a statistic I read a little while ago around the police and mental health issues and people being arrested and how they were treated. But I just can't remember the numbers now, so I'm not going to try and pretend there's a statistic there. I don't remember.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
And what are some of the kind of dysfunctional ways in which like Black men in particular kind of deal with their mental health issues? Is there anything that springs to mind for you?
Something that I have maybe wondered is maybe using things like alcohol and particularly cannabis. I feel like I've known a lot of sometimes exes and sometimes friends who I feel like when they discuss, like, they're like, oh, I can't imagine not smoking weed. I'd go crazy. And like that to me sounds like if you feel like you have to have it to be able to kind of function, then it kind of sounds like there's something that you need to address and work through, if there's whatever's playing on your mind or whatever it is that they mean when they say that. And it kind of it makes me sad that some people, like, I'm not against, like, some people use like a little bit and that's fine, but I think some people get so reliant on things like smoking weed and drinking that they're not even the same person anymore, and they're obviously probably like covering up some mental health issues maybe that they don't want to address. So I think that can be one thing that's definitely an issue.
Yeah.
And then maybe I guess also, like, sorry.
No, you go. Go.
I was only going to say also maybe if people were, say, experiencing some problems with their mental health and they weren't addressing it, they could end up being like snapping at their friends and family, like getting angry and not even realizing like what was wrong. So maybe that could be an issue as well. I've had an ex in the past actually who didn't tell me till after we broke up that he was like, oh, I was going through depression our whole relationship. And I was like, oh, well, why didn't you tell me that? Because I just thought you were just being horrible to me for no reason. And it's really interesting to see that, someone will be going through that your whole relationship for, like, I think we were together for a year, and he just didn't tell me that he was going through depression. So I think, it can come out in a lot of kind of unhealthy ways, really.
It's inside of that is that shame of like admitting that, and like the judgment as well, right? The judgment that can come. How is my girlfriend going to judge me when I say that I'm suffering from depression or I'm going through that? It's definitely a big thing for men. And even the work I do with men is not necessarily around mental health. I'd say there's a lot around mental fitness in terms of coaching, helping them express their emotions. And a lot of when I'm working with them, they don't want to express how they feel because they're scared of any judgment that can come back from other people. I don't want to say I'm sad because people will judge me. I don't want to say, they're too happy or they're doing well because they don't want any judgment. They're just encasing themselves from any outside judgment, which doesn't help in terms of I think for me, a lot about mental fitness is around allowing emotions, thoughts to flow, them to come into your mind and let them to flow out in some way, whether that be through speaking, through movement and dance, or whatever it may be. We'll get something to get into later on, a bit more of the details around how to keep yourself in good mental fitness. But one of the things I really want to pick up on is we're talking about self-medication using like weed and other drugs and sex even. I'm always thinking of Eric Benet. I always think of Eric Benet. But and I was listening to some podcasts recently, and the sex addiction is like really up on the rise amongst, and it's generally a thing that men suffer from. It's definitely much higher amongst men than in women. And I'm thinking of the book, The Truth by Neil Strauss as well, because at the beginning of the book, he's in therapy for sex addiction. And these addictions we have, whether it be drink, drugs, sometimes it's even exercise, sex, whatever it may be. There's always an underlying thing we're running away from. We are using that addiction on top to mask from what's really happening with us. And it's very much the case. So, if you're a listener and you've got a friend and you're looking at your friend and you're like, he smokes weed every day, or he's drinking every day, or he finds him, you see that he is having lots of meaningless sexual relationships. It's like there's a masking of underneath it, and people aren't always even aware of what's going, the discomfort. There is a discomfort in every addiction, and this is my own experience to even my addiction of my phone. I've noticed recently, I pick up my phone when I'm in some form of discomfort. It could be as simple as that I'm working and I don't really understand what I'm doing, or that I am stressed because I don't know what I'm doing, or I'm finding something difficult, or, even I find eating is something I've noticed. But when I'm trying to do something, if I find myself going to the kitchen constantly, which is very easy right now, where I work in my front room all the time, that there is something I'm running away from. There is some emotion that I'm running away from, some feeling that's underneath that I don't want to feel. So I distract myself from it by going away. But it's definitely something that all of us actually have to pay more attention to, our tiny addictions, whether they be going to the fridge, picking up the phone.
Yeah. Mine's shopping, online shopping. It's so bad.
A really good exercise, actually. And I learned this from a book called Indistractable. The guy's name is, I can't remember his name, but the book's called Indistractable. And he talks about what you should do is when you find yourself having these urges to pick up your phone, do some online shopping, just sit for a second and be like, what am I uncomfortable about? What am I feeling right now? And you start to write a few words of what you're feeling. And I did this for about 2 days, actually. And it was remarkable that basically it's the same few feelings that kept coming up for me of some form of discomfort. So it's a really great little exercise for you listeners to try out if you find yourself, addicted to online shopping, sex, and you can just take it on and try that out. But we have digressed.
Yeah, I really like that.
Yeah. So one of the kind of bit of change of tact actually is like how does like our mental health issues adversely kind of affect our romantic relationships, and our family relationships, and even our dating lives? This is something I come across with some clients I work with, and I see how it's affecting their relationships and with their partners and also their dating lives. But I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, Minowa.
Yeah, definitely. So I think one of the main things can be like shame and guilt and resentment that the person that's going through the mental health issues can experience, which means that they might try and hide their feelings from either their family or their partner. Meanwhile, their partner can be left feeling confused or frustrated by their inability to help. And in some cases, like, for example, someone with depression or anxiety might find it difficult to follow through with household tasks, have limited emotional availability, or struggle to maintain employment and lack of desire to socialize. So all of those things could be affecting your relationships if you're living with family right now, like during lockdown maybe, or with your partners as well. This can be quite intensified. And then also I think mental illness can also mean that a person is disinterested in sex, either as a result of the condition or also as a result of their treatment. So obviously this can create an issue in a relationship, particularly if you're struggling to discuss what you're going through with your partner. They might start to think it's something that they've done, or not really understand what's going on. And obviously it's decreasing the opportunity for your intimacy and bonding. And then also, I think the one that I'm related to most, which is this unhealthy relationship pattern can also manifest as codependent behaviors. So with one person enabling the other person's poor mental health or addiction or coping strategies, the person of the partner with mental illness may start to derive their self-worth from the degree to which they are needed or how much they are able to take care of their loved one. And obviously, in extreme cases, codependency can increase the risk of abusive behaviors, including manipulation, name calling, and other unhealthy dynamics. So knowing how to distinguish the need to encourage support from the codependent nature of managing the other person's symptoms is really important, because I found I did that a lot in previous relationships. So I think it's important for there to be like a paradigm shift, because people should feel empowered to seek help or to help their loved one if they're struggling. And mental illness, shouldn't be seen as a character flaw. But obviously, at the same time, people should also be held accountable for their actions and behaviours. But they also do deserve context, support, and understanding so that they can learn how to manage their own well-being and heal from past trauma, and obviously honour their partner's experience if it's their partner who's going through it.
I really heard what you said about the codependency in it. This isn't just ever actually in relationship. It's also something I see in just before people get into a relationship. They have a codependency. They do, as you said, deriving their self-worth from the other and the interactions they have with the other person. And this turns into, I see it a lot with around text messaging. This is an interesting one. Bear with me, people. Text messaging, where if their partner replies to them in what they see as a timely fashion, usually something between instantly and a few minutes, they are happy and the relationship is good. And if the partner doesn't reply within a few minutes, as the minutes tick on, there must be some calculation for this, because there's going to be one out there somewhere. So as the minutes go on, they feel their self-worth and their self-belief in themselves and the relationship ticks down and down and down. And it has a really detrimental effect on your relationship, because it puts a huge pressure on the other person to always be available and reply. And it almost creates a situation where you're having to hold someone else's self-worth up at the detriment of your own way of living. Yeah,
definitely. I find I've got a friend actually who's been talking about that issue, how she gets annoyed at herself because she's like, I don't want to be constantly worrying that he's going to reply because he'll be out skating and stuff. Like, she doesn't want to be so bothered when he doesn't reply, but she finds it really hard to not, like you said, associate the reply with like where the relationship is and her self-worth. And yeah, it's really interesting to see like how much our phones have become like, I don't know how to describe it, like, I don't know, just it can be difficult as well. I think obviously if you're, like you said, trying to not be on your phone too much, but then obviously getting the balance of that and being in contact with the person you're with. But I think it's important to, if you're in a relationship, to try and remind the person in other ways, like to show how secure you guys are and how much you care about each other without it having to be maybe through text. Even maybe if it was through, I think even phone calls, I think can be a bit more personalized, and I guess just like letting them know if you aren't available at that time, saying I'll message you later, rather than, I think that could be the problem when someone will open a message and leave people on read. Can obviously really hurt someone, and the other person might not think anything of it, because they'll be like, oh, I'll just reply later. But I think, yeah, just being able to discuss that with the other person, that maybe you might be someone that's not as good with your phone.
Yeah, it's an interesting one with relationships and dating, because my personal experiences is that I am one of these people, especially as I've got busy in the last few months, I cannot reply to messages sometimes for a week. I will look at the urgency. I'm like, is this urgent? Right? Do I need to reply to this right now or today? No. This is like, hey, how are you? How's things? Then it's like, okay, this can wait. This can wait a week. When I've got like an hour and I've got nothing to do, I'll sit down and reply to this. And most of my friends who know me now or have got to know me, they realize that this is how I reply and they're fine. But there has been times in the last year where people were like, is there a reason why you haven't replied? I'm like, no. I've just been busy. And they're like, but you've been on your phone. I'm like, yeah, I have, but I'm still busy. And this message is just like something that's not unimportant, because in saying that, it sounds like the person isn't important, but it's just that it's not an urgent matter in our lives. I think there's definitely an education for people, and there's an exercise of awareness actually in when we feel ourselves worrying, like, oh, someone hasn't replied to us, what does this mean? And I say this a lot to people, and people I work with, is like, ask yourself, what do I make this mean about me? What are you making it mean about you and who you are? And just sit there with that question, write it down sometimes, because you have to, it's amazing when you start writing something out, it becomes a bit more real. You take the thoughts out of the head and you put it onto paper, and then you read it. And then you can really ask yourself, like, is this true? Is it true that if my girlfriend doesn't reply to me in half an hour, that she wants to leave me? The chances of this, especially, are quite low. But equally, if you're dating someone, because I think this is something that comes up a lot for people in the kind of anxiety of dating, is, oh, I sent them a message, they've read it, they haven't replied for a few hours. Oh my God, that means they don't like me. And there just becomes this internal tension for you when actually there's a letting go, allowing another person to be. But I understand that when you're in the grips of that sort of anxiety, it's very difficult sometimes to step out of that. But it does have a real detrimental effect on the relationship. But there's definitely some tools and strategies you can use to combat that. One of the things I found quite interesting was around sex drive. Like, I do a lot of work with men around sex and intimacy. And I've even seen for my own self, as like my levels of stress go up. My mind is so preoccupied with what other things I'm doing, that like my whole libido kind of drops. And I've really read into this recently, and a lot of it's around the fact that our nervous system, basically, when we are stressed, the last thing we need to concern ourselves with is procreation. We need to, if we're stressed, the chances, when you go back to the days of the savannah and the lion, if we're stressed because there's a lion there, we need to pay attention to that lion, and we need to just think about that lion all the time. When we are relaxed and there's no lion, we can think about procreation, procreate all you like, but but now there's no lions around, and we find ourselves with mental health issues, which mean that we are continuously anxious, and it really has this detrimental effect to our sex life. So it's worth investing in kind of stress relieving methods, whether that be, I know I'm going to tell you those in a minute. Got some great ones to you around ways to relieve this sort of stress. But it's really interesting to see, we often forget about sex drive as something that's really important to a relationship, or important to us personally in your own self-care, your self-pleasure practice as well. Yeah, I see. I see more and more. I don't know how you think about this. I think that we live in an age more and more where there's a low level of anxiety that we just live with a lot of the time, and most people just live with as being quite normal.
Yeah, even I do.
Yeah. And do you think it's because of the way we live, or some other creation?
Yeah, I think partly, like, obviously, like our culture in living in England. I was chatting to an Uber driver the other day, and he's from Cyprus, and he was saying, like, you people here, like, you all just, everything's so fast paced, you're always in a rush, everyone's really stressed, and it's kind of just normalized to be kind of working to the point where you're just exhausted and being rushed around. So I think that anxiety is kind of normalized because we live in such a fast-paced kind of world. And even during lockdown, I feel like there's still been this pressure to be like, oh, but you've got to be really productive and make the most of this time, and like prove that you're doing all these, productive things by posting on social media that you're, cooking and meditating and stuff. So I think in that way it's kind of been normalized. But then also, I think, like we were saying, I think there's even for me, obviously, even though I've done psychology at uni and I want to become a counselor, even I feel like I still struggle to talk about my mental health sometimes. And I think it's easy to dismiss your own when you don't feel like it's got to a really bad point where you feel the need to seek help or anything like that, that it can be easy to dismiss it, because you can always compare yourself to someone else. You always be like, oh, but this person's living in this situation, or they've got it worse than me. So I think it's quite easy to dismiss your own mental health until it gets to a point where maybe someone else mentions that they're worried about you or something like that. So I think, yeah, it can be quite easy to dismiss.
Yeah, I think there's a really good point there actually about the comparison. And I'm always reminded of being a kid, right? And not eating my dinner. And I never forget this. And I imagine there's a lot of people that have had this experience. And my mom would be like, you know, there's starving people in the world. They don't have any food. You know, you should be grateful. And I think that, you know, as much as her intentions were good, and I understand what she's saying, what that creates in our minds is this idea that what we're feeling isn't valid because it's not as bad as it could be someone else's, right? And it's this feeling like, okay,
Yeah.
so I'm living in my house, I'm living in my flat in East London. It's comfortable. I've got a good job, and I have a wonderful partner. And if I'm feeling depressed, I don't have the right to be depressed because my life isn't that bad. When in fact, I think this adds to the depression, because you might feel depressed, and then you start thinking, I shouldn't be depressed. My life is good. What's wrong with me? You know, I should feel better than this. I can't speak it because other people will think that I'm ungrateful. I am, I'm a bit of a brat, whatever it may be. But in fact, whatever you're feeling is completely valid and is relative to you and is worth sharing. And I think it's a really important message that even if there's someone else in the world who's far worse off than you, it doesn't make what you're feeling any less valid. And I think we have to do our best to do this with people we meet, to really communicate to them that it's okay, even if your life is perfect, even if you're a millionaire, even if you're a princess, right? Your feelings of depression, your feelings of anxiety are still valid for you to share. They are still, it doesn't mean because you have all the money or the luxury or the fame that your life should automatically be perfect. Like, I'm always thinking of the story of the princess in the pea. And I always think to myself, the princess was, I completely understand why she felt uncomfortable with that pea, because in her life, that was a serious problem for her. That kept her awake at night.
Yeah.
It caused her stress. She was probably anxious. She was probably suffering from like erratic sleep patterns. Her life felt horrible for her. But yet there would have been people who would have gone, oh, it's only a pea. But actually, our lives are very relative to what we're experiencing.
Yeah, I really like that. It's very true, because like I was saying, I think I do it myself a lot, where especially, during lockdown, when you think of people that are obviously in really difficult living situations or have lost jobs and stuff like that, it's really easy to be like, oh yeah, I don't have it that bad. I'm really great. Like, I know, obviously, but I think the main thing that's important is really to obviously be aware that there might be people that might be struggling more than you. But like you said, it doesn't make your feelings any less valid. And as long as you're grateful for the things you do have, it's okay to feel anxious or sad about the things that you don't, and the things that you're struggling with in terms of your mental health.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. It's like you can be grateful, but you can also be unhappy.
It's okay too. Yeah.
All your feelings are welcome. All your feelings are welcome. So we'll move on to how can people, I think we touched on a little bit, but like, what steps can we take to keep ourselves in a good kind of mental place? Like, one of the things that I've found that's really useful to me, well, two practices actually. One of my practices is like a meditation practice. I meditate every morning, and I quite regularly do breath work. I find it's a really beautiful practice that gets me out of my head and into my body. And it's an amazing practice. There are two things that I do that I find are good for my mind. Like, if I meditate 2 or 3 times a day, then I'm in a really great place. But what are some really good practices that people can take on to keep themselves in kind of good mental health and good mental fitness?
Yeah, meditation is definitely my top one, I think. And I've just discovered actually tapping meditation, which I really like. Have you tried it? Oh, I
No,
love
I
it.
haven't tried tapping.
It's really interesting. I'd never heard of it before, but I discovered this app which annoyingly, I'm trying to find one that's cheaper, because the app is like £65 for the year, which I think is a little bit excessive. But I really enjoyed that they've got a couple free ones on the app that you don't have to pay for, which is really interesting. And I think the reason I like it so much is because, as much as I love the Headspace app, I do still find myself getting distracted quite easily, which is why I like things like yoga, and I did Tai Chi once, which I really liked, because it means that you can kind of meditate, but you've got something to focus on. I think that's what is good about the tapping. So I definitely recommend looking into doing that. I'm sure they'll have more on YouTube, so I'm going to try that. The only thing that put me off doing a YouTube meditation is obviously the adverts would kind of ruin it.
Definitely.
And then another thing I found really useful during lockdown is having like a morning and evening routine, because I think it's very easy to, especially if you're not working at all, to not like go to bed at a regular time, or get up at a regular time if you feel kind of demotivated to do anything, because you're like, well, I've got no plans yet again. So, but obviously having a morning and evening routine can really help, both with your sleep pattern as well. Obviously sleep affects your mood, so that can be really good. And also just having a bit of structure to your day can be really useful, as well as doing like gratitude and affirmations in the morning, I find really useful. And especially like for affirmations, I tend to do them talking about, well, both things during lockdown, but also things to look forward to when it ends as well can be nice. Also eating healthily is really good, because I do notice a lot if I'm eating, obviously nothing wrong with like treating yourself sometimes as well, but if I eat like a lot of kind of heavy fatty foods, I just feel it's crazy how much it affects your mental health as well. Obviously going for a walk, which is one I still need to push myself to do more. I haven't left the house today, and I know it can be quite difficult when it's not a sunny day, but I never regret going. And obviously you can listen. My favorite thing to do is listening to either music or podcasts when you're walking, which can be good motivation to get you out and doing it. And then also having a break from social media can be really good. And maybe like setting yourself a timer can be good, because I know it's easier said than done, because often you can be like, yeah, I'm going to have a break, and then you never do. So if you just set yourself even just an hour where you read or do some yoga or anything that's just not going on social media, can be really good. And as well as avoiding the news as well. Not if you don't have to avoid it completely like I do, but just kind of limiting your news intake can be really important as well, because I've found the few times I've even seen a clip of the news makes me feel so anxious, because it's just almost always so negative. So I think people can forget how much that can affect you, because people think, oh, I need to keep it updated with the news. And it's like, do you though? Because especially with social media, you're going to find out. You're not going to miss out and be like, oh, I didn't realize we went out of lockdown. Like someone will tell you. So I don't think it's necessary to watch the news all the time. And then anything else? Yeah, like you said, doing meditation, doing workouts is really useful. And also doing something creative. I found me and my friends have been doing like painting, which before I never would have done, because I've always told myself, oh, I'm not a very creative person, and like it's very easy to judge yourself straight away when you're doing it. But we had loads of fun when we were doing it together, because we like sometimes we do one that was maybe a little bit more serious, and then sometimes we do one that was more funny. But when we were doing them together, like the main focus was to not be judging each other. Like we might laugh if it's meant to be funny, but like the more we were just, because we were doing so many paintings, we weren't worrying about it being perfect to be framed. Do you know what I mean? So that was really nice, because the more you do it, the more you realize it's relaxing. It doesn't have to be something you're going to even share on social media. Like you're just doing it for you. And then another one I find useful is because I don't know about you, but I mean, I always have weird dreams, but particularly when I'm stressed, I get even weirder dreams. So I think writing down my dreams in the morning can be really useful, because sometimes if I don't write them down, I forget them really quickly. And then that means that all day I'm kind of having this weird like feeling where I'm feeling weird about something. I can't really remember what my dream was, but I know it wasn't good. But if you do remember to write it down in the morning, then sometimes you could either Google what some of the meanings are to try and figure out what the meanings were. And also sometimes you can just figure it out yourself. Like there'll be little things that you'll be like, oh, that makes sense. That's why I had that dream. And I think that can really help, because I know for me, sometimes I have such strange dreams that I'm like, what the hell is going on? So it can be really useful as well.
Yeah. There's a lot of things in there like that. And I was thinking about them as things that I just kind of bring into my day. Like the meditation, the routine. I have a very strict morning routine. Well, not very strict, but actually I'm pretty strict with it. My girlfriend will tell you that I get very grumpy if she tries to mess with my morning routine. And I wake up most mornings at 7. I make 3 different teas: green tea, tulsi tea, and lemon and
3?
ginger. Yeah, I make the lemon and ginger from scratch. So I like boil the ginger,
nice.
add in some lemon.
Nice.
And then I read for about 15 or 20 minutes in the morning. I've added this in recently, actually. And I find it's a really nice, I really enjoy it. My part of me really wants to read something that's really kind of like useful to help me learn something. Like I've been reading a book about coaching at the moment, but I was reading something about philosophy, and I found that was really nice because it allowed my mind just to completely relax in the morning. And then I do yoga, and then I meditate. That's my morning routine. So there's quite a few things in there, but it does set you, if you have something that sets you into the right mood at the beginning of the day, it's really important.
Yeah, it makes such a difference. I need to get back into it, because I wrote myself a whole morning and evening routine, and I've managed to not stick to it, and I've started scrolling on my phone again. Sometimes I'm getting a little bit better with that now, where if I do go on my phone before I've got up, I won't let myself go on social media. I only go on. So I've got an app called Sleep Cycle, which I really like that, because even though I would like to get a proper alarm, because I know it's not good to have your phone in your room with you, but I'd like this app because it measures when you're in your lightest sleep. So you set like a half an hour time slot that you want to be woken up, and then do you have the app too?
I've used it, yeah.
Yeah, and then I just love that it wakes you up in light sleep, because it makes such a difference, so that you don't feel as tired. And I like that it records your sleep. My friends find it really weird. They're like, "Oh my God, that's so weird," but I find it really funny, because I say some really funny stuff in my sleep. The other day I said confused.com.
Do you need some insurance?
Apparently. But yeah, definitely morning routine. When I did stick to it, you feel like I think as well, because when you do go on your phone, if you scroll on your phone first thing in the morning, you do instantly feel guilty, don't you? Because you know that that's not the way you want to start your day, and it's not going to make you feel better, unless you only follow really motivating, amazing things, which, let's face it, we all do follow some pages we know we shouldn't, because it gives us, we end up feeling jealous of someone else's life. So I think, yeah, trying to, even just starting out with not going on your phone first thing can really help. And like you said, even just 1 tea, let alone 3, would be a great start as well.
Yeah. One of the things I don't actually sleep with I've got an alarm clock now in my room. So I sleep, my phone is usually in my bedroom, in the front room, sorry. So I have to get up. And like you said, I have what's the set screen time on my phone. So I can't go into certain apps before like 9:30 anyway. But I found a huge difference if I don't look at my email, I don't look at Instagram, I don't look at Facebook, I don't look at WhatsApp, because it just gives your mind less things to start thinking about in the morning. This is my theory is, if I could, ideally was like, I could do with really going back to analog life and having something I can press play on, because I listen to some affirmations in the morning as well when I'm kind of making my tea, that I don't have to touch my phone and I don't have to touch anything really electronic, would be really nice until I start work. And I think it just gives your mind less things to ruminate over before it needs to. So it starts you off in a kind of more gentle way, because you have plenty of the day to be thinking and worrying and planning. Let your morning be a time of peace to ready yourself for the day. I find it's a really good way to go.
Yeah.
One of the things I've found,
Yeah,
and I see in other people that's really useful, is having some form of purpose. Some form of purpose I find is really good for us it gives us some direction, it gives something to focus on. Like, I know quite a few people, and it's not necessarily who feel that their faith whether that be religious faith or their belief that the universe provides, or whatever their faith is, really helps them stay centered and grounded in their lives and keeps their mind in order, because they understand there's something higher than themselves. There's something greater than they are. There's that plan, and it allows them to relax and not be so focused on the nitty gritty and small things, which I find is a really interesting way to tackle mental health, actually.
Yeah, definitely. Before I started like working with Black Minds Matter, I started an online counselling course, which I found really good, and there was a audio book for it as well, so I'd use that when I'd go on my walks. I need to start doing that again, actually, because it's been quite busy at work. I haven't really kept on top of it, but I think, yeah, it was really nice to have some kind of focus during lockdown, because before working with Black Minds Matter, I was a waitress, so obviously the first lockdown I didn't have any kind of work, and yeah, I think it's definitely really useful to choose something that you really enjoy to learn about. I think we forget to do that sometimes when we're scrolling on Instagram and different social media, that actually, because I always think back to when I'd always think back to how I'd missed like lectures and stuff in uni, and then you're like, oh yeah, but I could just do my own research. Sometimes we forget that there's so much information online that we can access either free or relatively cheaply as well.
Yeah, it's there's so much that we can learn for nothing. Like, I was speaking to a friend of mine, and he's currently learning about online marketing, and he was saying how there's, you can buy a course for, I don't know, 100, 2, 3, 400 pounds. He said, but really you could go onto YouTube and find someone's videos and just watch them, and you would learn everything you need. We live in an age now where there's so much quality information available, right? There's podcasts, there's YouTube videos, there's even people on IGTV with their videos and stuff. But yet we still find ourselves gravitating towards the mindless shit that doesn't do anything for us, or the pretty shiny things that allow us to compare ourselves to other people and make ourselves worse, right? Which is it's like, as you talked about, scrolling through Instagram, especially in the morning.
Yeah.
You might not be conscious of what you're doing, but actually when you're scrolling through, you're looking at these people or places or whatever, and you're comparing yourself to this place. And you almost always compare yourself as being worse or lesser than what you're seeing. And this really, as a cycle, as a daily cycle, as a morning cycle, really puts you into a bad place mentally, just starting off your day.
Yeah, definitely. I think, yeah, even though we know that when we post something on social media, we'll like post it in the best light possible. Or sometimes I think we're aware that if we're feeling down, maybe we'll post a selfie from last week when we were feeling good. Do you know what I mean? So like, we know deep down that the person that's posting might not be all that they say they are. And even if they are, there's no need to feel like that we are less than them, but we still, yeah, like you said, gravitate towards doing those things rather than, yeah, educating ourselves or even choosing things that we are really interested in. Because I think before the pandemic, it was so common for people to say, oh, I haven't got time to do that. But now, even when we've had all this time to do it, we're still like, still don't want to do it. But it's so important for our mental health because then I think you can figure out if you've been struggling to know what you want to do as well in life in general. I think like just reading through different things that you might have an interest in can make you realize how much you're passionate about it, because I wasn't fully sure that I wanted to be a counselor. I think I always dismissed it because I always thought, I'm too sensitive and I wouldn't be able to take on other people's problems. But then my mum pointed out that I often tend to go for relationships where I, like it was saying in the description about the codependency, where I end up trying to save people that obviously need to maybe work on their own mental health. And she was like, why do you say that you can't handle it if you go for these people that obviously need to? And I was like, that's so true, I can do it. So I think it can be so good to kind of, yeah, figure out what your potential and, yeah, not put yourself down by just scrolling mindlessly.
Yeah. Definitely. And what you talked about there, the wanting to help and fix other people. There's actually a theory. It's called broken wing theory. I don't know if you've ever heard of it, around our want to fix other people. And it's by proxy of feeling that other people, if we fix enough people, then we will feel that we are fixed ourselves. I used to call it broken wing theory just as a kind of joke. And then we did a podcast episode about it way back. It's probably in the 30s or something. And actually it's called broken wing theory. And I was really surprised that it's a very interesting topic to read about if it's something you want to get into.
Oh yeah, I'll definitely research that.
The one other thing I think we've both kind of forgotten to mention actually is the importance of connection in keeping oneself in good mental health. Like, it's something that I have to be really mindful of. And sometimes I have to like go out of my way, be like, oh, I've only seen my partner all week because, you know, we live together. Oh, I haven't seen anyone else. Oh, I need to call some people. I need to go and see my fam. I need to, you know, pick up the phone. I need to do a video call, because actually you get a lot of energy, very uplifting, you know, speaking to someone, seeing how they are, you know, laughing and joking. Maybe, you know, you've got family who are children, and children are always great because you talk to them and they're generally always fucking happy, right? Especially the younger they are, the happier they are.
Yeah.
But connection, keeping connection open and not feeling like you don't have anything to offer people, because you do. Your value is in who you are, not in the things you can do for people. It's really important to keep in that remembering and keeping the connection open with people.
Yeah, definitely. I think that can be something that can maybe be difficult for people suffering with depression. They might often think, oh, that person hasn't messaged me in ages, they obviously don't care. Or maybe they might think, oh, I don't want to bother someone with my problems. But I think with lockdown, obviously so many people have really found it difficult. So I think it's even more important to not dismiss those feelings and think that your friend wouldn't care, because if they're a good friend, then I'm sure they would. And I think it's easy to think, oh, they haven't messaged me, that they don't have time to talk to me or something. But the fact that they might be thinking the exact same thing, where they think that you haven't contacted them either. So it's better to just reach out to that person that you haven't spoken to in ages, even if they don't reply straight away, or they don't really give much of an answer. I'm sure they would still appreciate you reaching out. And I think, yeah, it's really easy to kind of retreat into ourselves as well. Because I remember thinking when they first had the announcement saying that we were going to come out of lockdown, as much as I was really excited, I also got this kind of feeling of anxiousness, because it's been so long since we've had big social events, and it just being normal to be able to, even just being normalized to being able to meet people. Because I'll meet my friend for a walk, but even that, there's some people that would judge you for doing that. And the idea of the fact that we're going to be allowed to do these social things again, I was like, oh my God, like, it's going to be so weird to adjust to that. And like, obviously when you've gone for so long not seeing certain people, it's kind of overwhelming when they ask you. I remember after the first lockdown, people being like, so what have you been up to? And there's that pressure of like telling them that you've been productive still, and trying to think of all the things to update them on, when at the same time it's okay to remember that we haven't had a lot of options to do a lot anyway. But yeah, I think connection is definitely a big one.
Yeah it's I think there's going to be a really interesting time where we reintegrate into social interactions again. We get used to being around large numbers of people, touching other people. I keep joking with people that I'm going to run a workshop about, you know, touching 101, like how to be in a room with other people, how we normally, you know, engage in touch, how touch is really good for us, because it's been so long. You know, when's the last time you were in a room with 50 people?
Exactly. And even just the you know, like, I think it was during when we came out of the first lockdown, and when we got to meet people, and you had that kind of weird, like, trying to figure out if someone was okay with hugging you. I think that's going to be really weird to get used to, because I carried on hugging all the way through, I'm not going to lie. But you can see it in some people's faces. They might not say it, but you can tell that they don't want to hug you. And then you don't want to cross that boundary, because you don't want to make someone feel uncomfortable. But then I did find that when it got to the point where I think maybe when we were out of lockdown, but maybe masks became mandatory, where you kind of had to not hug people, but it felt like that was a kind of an awkward moment when you first see someone, especially if you usually did hug, where you just don't hug anymore. It's just so strange. So I think that's going to be strange to adjust to as well. But like you said, I think it would be important for that to be kind of reintroduced, because hugging and, like you said, touch is so important.
Yeah, physical touch is very good for us physically. Is it serotonin that's released? Was it oxytocin is released when we get physical touch, like, you know, hugging, especially long hugging for
Yeah, I think it's oxytocin. I think you're right, or maybe both. That rings a bell anyway. I think so.
A good long hug really does help lift our moods.
Yeah, definitely.
So the last question I have actually is something, when it comes to Black men, it's like, how can we support Black men, in helping them with their mental health and creating a space where they can feel that it's safe to speak and share and and say what's really going on for them mentally.
Yeah, I think, like we were just saying then about connection, I think if you've got maybe a friend or family member that you think is struggling with their mental health, like reaching out to them one-to-one, I think is definitely good. Obviously, without pressuring them too much if they don't want to talk about it, or if they don't seem like they're up for discussing it, then obviously don't push them, but just letting them know that you're there for them is one of the most important things, really. As well as supporting people who aren't necessarily showing like any particular signs that they're struggling with their mental health. I think it's important to remember that supporting everyone, whether you're struggling with your mental health or not, is really important. So yeah, reaching out to people I think is one of the main things. But also maybe if you wanted to try and help your friend working through it without trying to get them to talk, if they don't feel comfortable with that, maybe like when we're allowed to, like going for a run with your friend, or saying that you could maybe like cook a meal together, or doing something kind of productive that isn't just drinking together, something that you could maybe something that's good for both of your mental well-beings could be really helpful as well. And I think if your friend maybe does reach out to you, there can be like different helplines that they can reach out to if they don't feel comfortable talking to you, but they've said they want to reach out. But obviously I know that even with us, as well as like general GPs, often there can be a really long wait list for therapy, so I think that can be put people off kind of seeking help. So recommending different helplines like Samaritans and Sane Line, or even like Shout, which is one that you can text, which is really good, because then if you don't feel comfortable talking on the phone, can be really useful. And just maybe trying to, as well as talking about mental health, like one-to-one with someone that you think might be struggling, also trying to normalize it, like talking about it within a group, particularly for men, would be really good. Obviously making obviously when you first do it, some of your friends might feel a little uncomfortable, might joke around that it is a sign of weakness or something like that. But I think the more we talk about it, the less of a stigma there is, and it might resonate with someone, say in your group, who is like, oh, thank God, like they're also going through like some mental health issues, or they can understand, and then it might mean that they will then reach out to you, even if it's not in front of their friends. I think it can be really useful, even if it feels like your friends don't want to talk about it. I think it can really help. You're just knowing that someone else is going through it, even if you don't feel ready to talk about it.
Yeah, I love those. I think a really good one is something I've done with a few friends, is like, as you said quite a few times, going for walks and exercising together. Like it's it gets our bodies moving, it gets our the blood flowing, but something we can do together. And like you said, it's not drinking, because I think it's very easy to go into, oh, let's go for a drink, or let's have a drink, or even let's have a drink on Zoom. But it's also to remember that alcohol is also a depressive as well, right? Like we all understand the hangover, and the hangover is just the rebalancing from the high we were feeling previously. So, often the drinking can actually make people's mental health worse in the long run. One of the things, kind of inside of what you said about talking about mental health, that I've been going to a few of recently, is men's groups. I've been part of a couple of different men's groups, actually. I run one at the moment every Sunday at 5 o'clock on Clubhouse, where men just come together and share how they're feeling mentally, physically, emotionally. You can share as much or as little as you want, but it normalizes men speaking about what they're feeling. And I find it's been really beautiful for me to hear other men, older men, quite a few of them, maybe my father's age even, talking about how they feel, and just lets you know that however you're feeling, there's other men feeling exactly the same way as you.
Yeah, I love that. I think I did come across another similar thing. I think it's called Me Too Helps. I don't think it's particularly just for men, but I think it's like this, what you were saying, like a community thing where you can all share how you're feeling. I think it's anonymous as well, so I think that can be really good, particularly for people that maybe don't feel ready to talk with their friends about it, like because at least with something like that, you know that everyone's gone on there for that reason and no one's going to judge you, and you might feel it might, like you said, normalize it and make it easier for you then to go and talk to your friend or a mental health professional if you'd like to. So that's, I really like that. That sounds really good.
Yeah, but just know that there's a lot of support out there for you, to help you. There's so much support out there, and there's no shame. There's nothing wrong with you if you're struggling, and then people are a lot more accepting you think, and your friends are not as judgmental as you may assume them to be. It's something that I've seen in the last few months with my friends, is just saying, oh yeah, I'm really struggling. Just, saying those words to someone, I'm actually really struggling. And no one I've met or been around has been like, oh, what the fuck's wrong with you? It's always been, oh shit, like, what's up? How can we help? Like, here's some help. What can I do? Kind of thing. And yeah, there's no shame in asking for help. That's the thing I keep saying to a lot of men and women. It's like, there's no shame in asking for help. Asking for help is actually a huge sign of strength, because no one's an island on their own. We all seek help to create and do the endeavors and whatever it is it's important to us in our life. And without help, we are alone, and we can only do so much. But with help, we are more than the sum of our parts.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's also a good thing to remember with when it comes to reaching out to your friends, even if you know that they can't give the same help as like a medical professional, just letting you know, like if you're speaking to your friend, maybe let them know that you're not expecting them to know what the answer is, but just wanting them to listen can be really helpful. Because I know that my friend reached out to me and was like, oh, I didn't want to like burden you or anything, but I've just been really struggling. And I was like, you don't need to, I never want you to feel like that. Like, which is exactly what people often forget, isn't it? That they're going to be like, oh, I'm going to be a burden, or they won't know how to help. But even just writing down those things and saying it to someone can really help you. And I'm sure that your friends will completely understand that you're not expecting them to fix you or anything or know the answer, but just knowing that you're there. And they probably, particularly obviously during lockdown, have gone through something similar, or if not, are at the same time. So it's going to benefit you both.
Beautiful. Yeah, couldn't agree more. What a wonderful way to end, friendship and connection being so important.
Yeah.
So yeah, how is our listeners have heard a lot about Black Lives Matter UK. What's the best way in which people can get in contact, help, donate, and find out about the services that you have?
Yeah, so our website is blackmindsmatteruk.com. So you can reach us via there. You can fill out a form, and we will take a note of your contact details to add you to the waiting list if that's what you'd like. We also have a newsletter with like different workshops and stuff that you can sign up to as well, which again, you can email us and we can send you the link for that. We also have an Instagram and Facebook as well, which would be great if you're up for like sharing anything, particularly our 21k campaign would be really good, because that one I think will really help to raise the funds to be able to become a sustainable charity. So then that would be really useful. And the option that you don't have to sign up, as obviously ideally we want the 21,000 long-term donors of £5, but if you want to just make a one-off donation, that's absolutely fine. There's different options for that on there as well, so you don't have to commit to it. And then that's the main things really, I think. I feel like I'm forgetting something.
No, it sounds like it's been pretty comprehensive, and all the links they'll be in the show notes anyway. The links are down there to help. And I think it's a really important thing actually is to support like charities that are trying to make a difference. It's something that I've done for many years, because it's just, I'm in the position where I can help, and knowing that you can help people with whatever they're dealing with is always a really beautiful experience, I find.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, yeah, thank you. It's been beautiful to talk to you and talk about all things, mental health and Black men and men in Black communities. And yeah, just really grateful for you to be here and for your enthusiasm and energy. Thank you.
Oh, thank you too. I really enjoyed it.
Thank you. And thank you, listeners, for listening. Ciao, ciao.